Welcome back to Zuko Builds. Today we're building this A-frame sign that'll go in front of a storefront. All you really need, that specialty, is the plexiglass, and I have some twine to keep it from spreading open too far, and hinges on top. I used 2x3s that I cut down to 2x2s for the whole frame, and what else? I think that's about it. Let's hop right into it. The first thing I'm gonna do to these 2x3s is clean up one edge, and then I'll go ahead and flip them over and cut them down so they're 2 inches by 2 inches. Once you have all of your pieces ripped down to size, I'm going to unplug my table saw, swap my blade out for my dado stack. I cut out some rabbets to lay the plexiglass into, but if I were to do it again, I would cut dados through my legs and insert the plexiglass in the dados and build a frame around that. You'll kind of see why later on. But since I cut out rabbets instead of dados, I'll go ahead and take you through the process. I went ahead and marked my board with the front and the top, and I'll be sure to cut the rabbet on the back bottom side. I put in a 1/4 inch stack, so just my 2 blades. If I were to do it again, I would do a 1/2 inch stack, but you can make your rabbets whatever size you want. I also only cut these a 1/4 inch deep, so I just took my combination square, set it to a 1/4 inch, and set my blade to that height. Like I said, I should have cut out a 1/2 inch rabbet, but instead of taking out my blades and adding more spacers, I just scooted the fence over so both of my teeth will cut through, which will give me another 1/4 inch. So you can either do it this way or just start with a 1/2 inch or whatever size you plan on using. Once you have all of your rabbets cut out, now's a good time to sand everything, which is all of our favorite part. We all hate this. Who am I kidding? I was going to cut some miters for the corners, but instead I'll just butt them up and use dowels instead. If you guys want me to do a video on dowel joinery, let me know down in the comments below. One thing I will note on though is you want to make sure that your dowel jig, whichever one you're using, is clamped very tightly to your workpiece. You don't want there to be any wiggle room, or else your dowels are going to fit pretty loose. So clamp it down real tight, drill nice and slow. That'll give you a clean fit. This joint here, I guess it did wiggle a little bit, so this dowel fits a little loosely, but not too loose. So once I add some glue, it'll be perfectly fine. You just want to make sure to dry fit your joints before gluing them up. Once we know that everything is nice and square when it's put together, we can start gluing this thing together. You should put some glue in the holes, a little bit on the dowel, and I like to put a little bit of glue on the end or the face that I'm joining together. Once we have everything glued and put into place, I'll go ahead and take a clamp just to hold everything nice and tight. I made a mistake. I glued these flush to the sides I forgot they need to have some legs. So I think what I'm gonna do is take a handsaw, cut right at the joint, and then move these up about 4 to 6 inches so that it has legs on the bottom. And if I can't reuse the same piece, then I'll take some scrap wood that I have left over from this that are hopefully the width that I need or the length that I need. So stick to your plans. I got carried away. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. The fun thing about woodworking is when you make a mistake, how you go about fixing that mistake, and I figured this was the best way to go about it. Since there was a dowel intact, I didn't want to be hammering away, potentially ruining the rest of my workpiece, so I got my Japanese handsaw and just cut right at the joint, and thankfully this worked out perfectly. Then you can just take a chisel and some sandpaper and clean up the piece you cut off. With that little problem solved, instead of adding dowels again, I'm just going to set my combination square to 6 inches, making sure they're both even on either side of the bottom. And I'll just use some glue and clamps, making sure that everything stays nice and square. And since I am just using glue for these joints, I will let it sit overnight so I don't have to touch the workpiece while the glue is still setting. This will give it plenty of time to harden and to be nice and strong. With the glue drying, now we can start cutting down our plexiglass. I just made sure to swap out my blade for an older blade. You don't want to get that plastic all melted onto your good blades, and make sure to put some tape on your cut line. That'll reduce any chance of it breaking or cracking, and this gives it a nice and clean cut. Just go nice and slow, don't go too fast or you can melt the plexiglass. That rhymes. So I came back the next morning after the glue had dried and totally forgot I was shooting a video. But all I did was add some hinges and add some twine to prevent the legs from spreading too far. It's pretty straightforward. If you guys want me to cover that in a quick video, let me know down in the comments below. Just very quick, for the tine, I just tied some knots to prevent them from going through and stapled them on the back side. Now that the frame is basically built, before we put the plexiglass in, let's go ahead and finish this however you want to finish it. I'm just putting some spar urethane since this will be outdoors, and I honestly love the way pine pops sometimes. It's cheap wood, but sometimes it looks good. After I'm done applying this finish, I'll go ahead and let this dry overnight, so we'll come back again tomorrow and install the plexiglass and we'll be done. So let's attach this plexiglass now, and I'll kind of tell you why instead of rabbets, I wish I just cut dados. So I thought I can just pre-drill through the plexiglass and screw them into place, which I did with some scrap and it worked fine. But I had a sheet completely crack on me with one of the screws, so I had to cut out more plexiglass and it was just a pain. If you're doing it this way, just make sure to pre-drill holes that are a little bit larger than the screws you'll be using, so there isn't any friction when you're fastening the screws down. But like I said, I want to just cut dados for this next time. It all ended up working out, but what I didn't show on camera was where there weren't screws, I just added some super glue just to prevent it from flexing and bouncing around, which could potentially break when they're fastened down with screws. So honestly, I recommend just cutting dados out in the frame and sliding the plexiglass in, but this ended up working. Let's do that again because I'm awkward. Guys, it is hot in my garage. They're doing construction next door and it's about 98 degrees here in Cali. I have my garage closed, so I am sweating, but that's the build. We're done. I think if I were to do it again, I would cut slots inside of the frame so that the plexiglass can slide into, and I'll build the frame around the glass. Rather than cutting rabbets in the backside, I think it'll just fit together nicely and I don't have to worry about the plexiglass ever really coming off. But other than that, I think we did a good job. Pretty happy with it. I want to keep this covered for as long as I can until I give it to the owner. Sawdust just happens to not come off of plexiglass for some reason. It's kind of weird, but I'm gonna keep this covered. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Hit that like button if you did like the build. Subscribe, follow me on Instagram, say what's up, and I was gonna say something else, but I can't remember. So I guess I'll see you guys next week. Or what? Yeah, see you guys next week.